Amen? We are so very, very, very blessed. All right, well, we did have a good old time in the house of the Lord last Sunday, did we not? We had a great time, and we got, I believe, part of the beauty and the greatness of that day is that we were in the flow of just recognizing how big God is, and so we did it big, right? Because that bigness was already within us. That bigness was all around us. And we really centered ourselves in recognizing that our God is so big. And all we have to do is rise up to meet that consciousness, to meet that energy, rise up into our Christhood, right? It's not about that Christhood being born within us. It's us rising up to meet the Christ that always has been and always will be a part of our divine nature, and through that be open to recognizing just how big God is. And so if you were like me, you felt the energy of last Sunday and you went out and you said, I'm gonna change the world. Yes? How many of you changed the world this week? I believe all of us did. Interesting enough, if you had an inkling of saying, I did, but didn't, what does that mean to you? If you didn't even get to the place of recognizing that you this week had an impact in the world and made a change in the world, what does that mean? For me, it is a reminder of how we minimize so much within ourselves and within our lives. How many of you, somebody says, thank you for doing this. Oh, it was nothing. Is that your common response when somebody says thank you to you? Oh, it was nothing. It's this idea of minimizing who we are and minimizing the impact that we have. And when we talk about the bigness and the greatness of God, how many of us, have to take a breath to be able to recognize the ways in which we aren't giving ourselves enough credit for living into that kingdom, creating those blessings and those miracles within our lives. And so today, as part of the series that we're moving through, this series of What You Got? Think about it. What you got? Well, we've got the big God, right? We've got this big consciousness, this big energy of love and peace and joy that we are a part of, and we've got our faith in it. Now, how many of you, think you could have a little bit more faith? When things get rough, when you went out and said, I'm going to change the world after Easter, and then somebody went, went right in front of you on I-95, or somebody beat you, you're walking over to the line and somebody just got in your way and beat you to the line at the supermarket, right? And things come up, and if you're like me, you question them all right, well, there is this big God, and God, why don't I have full faith in it? Why don't I fully trust it? Why don't I lean on this consciousness more than I do? And I'm here to tell me and to tell you, we got to stop minimizing that which we're about. Whether we think we have all the faith and all the trust in the world, or whether we think we have just a little bit of faith and just a little bit of trust, can we not minimize it? Because from small things, big things can happen. Because it's not about the size of our faith, is what I'm going to share with you today. It's about the size of our God. And even a small little amount of faith in something as big and something as radical and something as powerful as we know God to be, it goes a long way. Have you recognized that for yourself? That everything sometimes starts as a small little thing, right? It's like that little seed that grows into the tree, that grows into the shade that we then get to live into. And it all started with the seed, and we can see it in nature, we can see it in gardening, but how can we see it more fully for ourselves? We don't just have this great God that we're a part of. We have come embedded with everything that we need to live into the bigness of God. And if God's greatness is already within us, well, what else do we need, right? What else do we need but to trust it? And to know that faith has already done a mighty work. Like in that idea of minimizing, sometimes we don't recognize just how powerful our faith is, that, man, it allowed us to get up in the morning. Our faith is so strong that it allowed us to be gathered here today. How many of you in your life prayed for a spiritual community like Unity on the Bay? Well, your faith manifested it for yourself. You believed in it so much that you created this experience called Unity on the Bay. You believed in it so much, and this faith, as small as it was, is creating miracles and ripple effects in the ways in which just we're with each other and we're about each other. And so it's time to stop minimizing it and recognize that there is power even in the small amounts of faith that are already within us, because our God is a big God. Say that with me. Our God is a big God. And so even the little faith that we have in this big God qualifies us for big things. Even the little amount of faith that we have qualifies us for big and impactful and amazing things. Because God has a history, if you don't know this, of using people with little faith. God has accomplished through people of little faith so much that we get to live in and we get to be inspired by. Why? Because it's not so much about the size of your faith that matters, but the size of the God that you are putting your little bit of faith within. And so even a little bit of faith has qualified you for big things in and through God. And I love that in our oneness with this God, with this consciousness and with this energy, it's not only that we get to do big things in and through God, it is that God gets to do big and great things through us. It is this relationship that we have that is nothing can separate it, nothing can limit it. And the more that we can live into it, the more that we will create heaven on earth. And so, while I say that the little faith that may be within you has already qualified you for great things, I believe that the little faith that we carry with ourselves has already done amazing things for ourselves and for each other. Turn to somebody next to you and say, I am qualified for big things. Now say it like you mean it. Own it. I am qualified for big things. And now turn to that person and say, and what do you know? You're qualified for big things. I love it. People are just already pointing all over the place, right? But we are qualified for big things. It's so many times in our lives we don't think we're qualified for the things that are already calling us, right? Like so many times we get invited into the spaces and places and experiences and we think, oh, wait, not yet. I'm not there yet, right? Like that's too big for me. I got to wait a little bit. No, if we're called into it, we were already made for the moment. Actually, I was in retreat this week, and what came to me is not only am I meeting the moment is meeting me. Not only are you, with whatever level of faith you have, meeting the moment God itself is meeting you wherever you are. And so again, doesn't matter how big your faith is, just a little bit can go a whole long way, especially if we're intentional about it. Now, it's really interesting because you may have guessed, I'm going to mention the faith at the size of a mustard seed. How many of you have heard that Bible verse before, right? How many of you, when you hear that verse, hear the one that says that, because we have faith the size of a mustard seed, we can move a mountain from here to there? Is that the one you're familiar with? That's the one that I was mostly familiar with. Guess what? Jesus really wanted us to get it, so he actually brought it up another time. And so the first one was towards the beginning of his ministry, and our master teacher, towards the end of his ministry, wanted to maybe invite us to anchor ourselves even more in what he was sharing. And so in Matthew 13, 31 through 32, it says, the kingdom of heaven, Jesus says, is like a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is the least of all seeds, but when it is grown, it becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and lodge in the branches thereof. Sometimes in life, it just feels like we never have quite enough. Have you gotten that? How many of you have recognized the times where you've said, I don't have enough. I don't have enough of things outside in the world. And the same thing happens about us ourselves spiritually too. We don't think that we have enough within us or that we are enough. And the time for underestimating the power of that faith is done, right? When we talk about rising up into our Christhood, the willingness to do so does the work. We can just rise up into the consciousness without minimizing it, without limiting, without saying that we are not ready for it, because the moment is going to meet us anyways. The moment that we say we are willing to meet the moment over and over again, we get reminded to not underestimate the power of faith. And faith, as Gina was sharing last Sunday in her testimonial, is one of the 12 powers that is within us through the Christ nature that we are. And so that faith, that power is already within us. And that faith is already active at its full expression in our lives. How many of you have a little bit of faith that I'm worth it? Well, that you're worth it, right? And how many of you, if you really think about it, put a little bit of faith in, I'm not worth it? If it comes up and you believe it and you act from that place, you're placing some faith in that way of thinking. And so it's not about having more faith, it's about how we direct our faith and how we allow ourselves to become more anchored in the kind of faith that creates the life that we want to live and the way that we want to go out into the world. So Jesus, when he was sharing about this, wasn't asking us to have a bigger faith. He was simply affirming the power of that tiny faith that is planted with intention. Rather than minimizing it, we're being asked to nourish that mustard seed, to bring it nourishment, to bring it water, to allow it to do what it naturally does, which is to rise up and to grow. That it becomes this tree, and through that it becomes a sanctuary for others. And so that tiny bit of faith, when we say yes to it, and we bring nourishment to it by praying on it, by meditating on it, by being lifted up and being in community that reminds us of the power that we have within us, all of a sudden we start to recognize, wait a minute, from this little bit that I have, more can come out of it. Enough to make things move, enough to have a real shift in our lives and in the world. And yes, when we say, all right, we're gonna go out and change the world or change my life, I'm gonna do things differently. I'm remembering actually a couple of things that I was intentionally wanting to do this week. Actually, I remember. I said I'd start on Monday, so I got a little bit more time. But, like all of a sudden we can, we put out the intentions, and all of a sudden, how many of you have realized that sometimes the other side of those thoughts come up? Well, I have this little faith. You don't have enough faith. I can do all things through the God and the presence of love that is within me. You're not going to be able to do that, right? I am worthy. Oh, I'm not that worthy, right? How many of you play the back and forth within your mind sometimes? And the question becomes, do we allow the monkey mind to keep us from just recognizing we can do this? See, because it's not about how little faith we have. It's about the faith that we have and doing something with it, trusting that it will grow and it will become much more. Because if we are persistent in our thoughts, they bring about more. It's a unity principle, right? Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. It's not only about manifesting the kind of life that we want. The thoughts that we keep in mind produce more thoughts in their like way. And so the more that I just sit with, you know what? I may have a little bit of faith. All these questions come up, all these limitations, all this other way of thinking come up. And you know what? I have this little faith. We hold on to it, we become persistent with it, and we nourish it. More thoughts like this show up, and all of a sudden, there's a tipping point where all those thoughts, all of a sudden we own them enough that we can actually speak them out into the world. How many of you have been to that place? It's like, oh, I'm powerful, but don't ask me to say that in front of a group of people, right? But then the more that we believe it, the more that we hold it, all of a sudden there's a tipping point where all of a sudden we can actually acknowledge that in front of people. We can speak it out loud rather than just in our minds. And all of a sudden that tipping point where it becomes, we held those thoughts in mind, all of a sudden I'm speaking out those affirmations and that way of thinking and that way of being, all of a sudden start to move us into right action. And that tiny little thought became a whole shift in how we show up in the world. So where is your faith now? Even the littlest amount of faith in your dreams and your aspirations and who you are, how can you continue to grow it and not minimize it? Last Sunday, I spoke about the collective work that is before us, that we are facing and that we are rising up above, and it can be daunting, and we are mighty. We are mighty individually, and we are mighty collectively. And one of the quotes that really honors that for me and that I love so much is by Margaret Mead. And it says, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." All movements started with a group of people coming together and recognizing that there was a different way of being. Guess what? All spiritual movement, all shift in consciousness starts with one thought. A committed and intentional thought that can change our world. In fact, that one little thought of faith that we allow to grow is the only thing that has ever changed our world and how we show up into it. And so just like those movements where it grows and expands, it happens within us. Whether it was David versus Goliath, and where the small becomes the greater, or when Moses, everybody talks about Moses bringing the Israelites into the promised land. Well, when he was first told that that was what he was going to do, he was like, wait, me? Who am I to liberate the people of Israel? Actually, not only was he asking, who am I? But he started giving excuses. Have you ever found yourself in those moments where not only are you questioning whether you are the one for this moment and you may not have all the faith in yourself, that you start to give excuses about why it isn't you? And Moses did the same thing. He's like, who am I to do this? I stutter. Who's going to follow me when I stutter? And started using all these excuses to say, oh, it's not me, it's not me. And guess what? God is bigger than that. Our big God can do amazing things with just our willingness to step into a greater space of faith. God used him for a greater good. And God is looking, seeking, expressing, allowing, whatever you may call it, to do some great things through us. Jesus himself surrounded himself with the apostles. Talked about the greatness of the apostle Peter. For those of you who may not remember, he just told Peter, get your things and follow me. And Peter believed in it so much, or in that little bit of faith in Jesus, that he went out and followed Jesus. But he wasn't always faithful. It was a journey for him. He's the same person that before the crucifixion denied Jesus 3 times. Think about that faith, where I'm going to follow you. Oh, wait, but the tough, what is it? The going got a little tough. I'm going to deny you 3 times, right? In the same way, he had enough faith that he decided to follow Jesus. But when Jesus said, well, get up and get out of the boat and walk on water like I'm doing, the story goes where he had took 1 or 2 steps and then his faith wasn't big enough. And yet, even though that is the expression, or that is the way in which Peter was showing up with Jesus, Jesus looked at him and said, on you, I will build my church. On your faith, I will do amazing things. God is building the kingdom of heaven through us, even in the tiny mustard seed of faith that we carry about ourselves and about our dreams, because faith, like the mustard seed, can grow. And so those few thoughts of, I can do this, I will get through this, I am God's living expression of good, I am God's power on earth, even those tiny little thoughts or tiny affirmations, if we allow them, can become a way of being, if we nourish it, if we allow it to grow. Sure, you got to move through some of those other thoughts. But just because the other thoughts come up doesn't mean that you don't have what it takes to do the mighty things that God is doing through you. We don't have to minimize it. Faith got you here. Faith brought you in. Faith has you connecting to the spaces within you that will flourish into the life of your dreams. And even a little bit of faith, again, qualifies us for big things. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1 says, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. I love that. It's the things hoped for. I don't fully believe it. I don't have all of a sense of it, but I'm hoping there's that small little openness for the good things and the great things that God shall do. So where is your vision being cast? And what are you hopeful for? And what are you willing to allow to grow into? And as we grow into it, we take the first steps, we set the intention, and then we allow the bigness of God to take us further. I step out in faith to you. You don't have to know where you're fully going. You have to have a vision of what you want to experience, how you want God's bigness to live through you, and you have to just have an inkling of a willingness for big things to be done. See, faith isn't measured by its size. It is measured by willingness. We don't have to have a perfect understanding of ourselves in order to know that we can show up in the world. We don't have to be fully fearless to be able to do courageous things. And all we need is that awareness that there's that spark, that there's that whisper within us, right? We talk about that in the silence. We go within and we listen to that still small voice. Sometimes it's a big old loud resounding voice, but a lot of times it's that still small voice. And so within our own still small voice, big things can come about. Faith is a pioneering spirit. When we are pushing against the boundaries, when we are pushing against the limits, when we are pushing at the evolution of consciousness, things come up, but they don't have to stop us, and we can still move through it. As Myrtle Fillmore says, now, great faith doesn't come as rain from the skies. No, it comes as a result of your deliberate claiming of faith as one of your God-given faculties, and then by seeking to do the thing which proves that you have faith. So a little bit of faith. How is this little bit of faith? How can I nourish it? How can I grow it? How can I remind myself more that I believe in it? And just even when we have the fear, even when it's difficult, move through it and allow it to take place. Allow the bigness of God to be what shifts us and moves us into a greater experience. Now, I had a little bit of an experience of that in the last couple of days. A friend of Unity's put up a picture on Facebook of some empty pallets. In that, she wrote that empty pallets, challenging times. We have not received the usual distribution that we rely on from USDA. Anything you have goes a long way. So, a little bit of faith that I can accomplish big things, almost overridden by, I cannot believe USDA has not given the money that that program deserves. A little bit of faith, though. That moved me from then going to the thought of, but what can I do with the bigness of what USDA can do? What can I do? What can my little bit of help support what is going on? My God is bigger. My God is bigger. My God is bigger. And so I was heartbroken. I thought what I could do was nothing in comparison to the USDA. And I pushed through my desire to minimize it in such a way that would stop me from taking some action. And all I did was share it on Facebook, go online, give my own money, and start thinking about what else I can do. I didn't know what else I could do, but I knew that there was something else that could be inspired from this. Literally, just a few minutes later, I get a phone call from one of our members who says to me, I saw what you posted. I saw the inspiration. I'd like to give a donation. You should have seen me almost fall to the ground when I all of a sudden got the text of his receipt for a donation of $10,000. A little bit of faith and us pushing through creates such a big shift for us and for others. See, the mustard seed grows into that tree, but I love that in this verse it says, all of a sudden, those trees will give shade to the birds. Our little bit of faith can not only shift things for us, but it could be what shifts things for humanity. Your small act of faith doesn't just bless you, it becomes a refuge and a light to bless others. And so now we have a big God. We have just the right amount of faith, no matter how small we think it is, and all we have to do, well, is you have to come next Sunday to hear more about the third part, which is give it a direction. What is the purpose for that faith? What is the purpose as we lean on God? And through this, I really got clear. I wanted to make a change to Margaret Mead's, quote. Never doubt that a small amount of intentional faith can change your world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. Namaste. Let's put our faith into action.